Good morning, all. My name is Kulula Manona. I am the Chief Director for Foundations for Learning at the Department of Basic Education. Today, I'm going to talk to you about positioning literacy and reading development as a national project. But before I do that, I must thank Letassa for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about a topic that has universal importance. I really do feel honored. Having worked with projects, I've come to appreciate the power of working cross-functionally. I know that they are fast-paced as deliverables are linked to time. So given this conference's important theme, which is about connecting the dots between literacy and home, school, community, and the world, I can already tell that if we are to succeed in doing what I'm going to propose, we are going to need to apply this cross-functional approach, as it will allow us to harness a collective energy, which we will need to achieve our objectives. We also need some agency if we are to turn our fortunes around. We, however, live in a connected world, so when we want to craft a vision, we have to align it with that of Africa and the world, and we also have to align it with our country's macro development vision. Looking at the world, we are guided by the Sustainable Development Goals to 2030, and here in Africa, we have the African Agenda to 2063, as well as the Continental Education and Strategy for Africa 2016 to 2025. Closer home, we have the National Development Plan to 2030 as the blueprint that outlines our vision as a country, and this has been teased out and prioritized, and these are outlined in the sector priorities and imperatives. We can all remember that in the State of the Nation address of 2019, the importance of reading and literacy was really highlighted. We also have this importance factored into the medium-term strategic framework of 2019 to 2024. Talking about a national project, let's quickly draw from the National Development Plan. I open quotes. By 2030, South Africans should have access to education and training of the highest quality, leading to significantly improved learning outcomes. The performance of South African learners in international standardized tests should be comparable to that of learners from countries at a similar level of development and with similar levels of access, I close quotes. That is what the vision for literacy is as outlined in the National Development Plan. What is our own vision then? Ours is that all young children, particularly in their formative years, should have access to stimulating environments to support particularly emergent literacy. All children should read for meaning by age 10. It is that all children and adults should read for pleasure, that our children's reading levels are comparable with those in similar levels of development and similar levels of access, and that all children should have access to a wide range of engaging reading materials in schools, in their homes, in the community, and particularly in their home languages. We do have threats to achieving this vision, though, that we should acknowledge. We have learned a lot from data about the link between low literacy levels and high levels of unemployment and poverty, and how this affects the economy. This is one of the major challenges facing South Africa, with a ton of research showing that many of our children cannot read at age-appropriate levels, and that there is a lack of reading in many South African homes. Given that UNESCO declared literacy as a human right and as a tool of personal empowerment, this then has to be urgently remedied. What are these realities then when we look at early childhood development? Firstly, let's talk about what the NDP asserts. It asserts that ECD services should be flexible and responsive to the needs of families and children, as well as the needs of the communities. It also envisages universal access to quality ECD programs and services. The reality, though, is that there is a long history of unequal and poor access to ECD programs, particularly for vulnerable children and for those living with disabilities, resulting in many children finding themselves in unstimulating environments. There's poor coordination in a complex and diverse sector with multiple players. There is also a lack of access to early learning opportunities required for children to be developmentally on track, including access to stimulating resources like libraries. When it comes to competencies of practitioners, there is a challenge there as well. There is also a lack of competency-based measurement tool that we can use to measure success in terms of ECD. When it comes to schooling, what are the realities concerning literacy and reading? And when we have looked closely at those realities, what lessons then can we learn? In terms of what the data has really shown us, it is that there's a common thread when it comes to deficits. Data shows us that our learners have comprehension, critical thinking, and problem-solving deficits. Where do we get this data from? We get this data from the PALS, from the SACMAC, and the TEAMS, which are studies that our children participate in. For instance, PALS, which is an international reading study, told us that 78% of grade 4 children cannot read for meaning in any language. We therefore need to create access to reading resources, and here I'm talking about ensuring that our children learn and live in print-rich environments. We have to highlight the importance of home language literacy, particularly in formative years. We have to teach learners to engage meaningfully with text to facilitate meaning making. And in terms of initial teacher education and in terms of continuing professional teacher education, we have to focus on strengthening pedagogy to teach comprehension. When it comes to SACMAC, what we have seen is that the results here corroborate those that have come from PALS and from TEAMS. And here we have learned that we need to support our learners to cope with questions of higher cognitive demand, and that we have to focus on pedagogy, both in pre and in inset training of teachers. Regarding TEAMS, we have learned that we need to improve the teaching, the learning and assessment at school, and we have to do this by including items that also demand our learners to apply their cognitive skills. TEAMS was also very explicit when it came to the issue of writing, by actually suggesting that the national reading strategy that is crafted should be expanded to include a writing component and should actually be called the reading and writing strategy. So when it comes to looking at the reality of living with COVID, we know that COVID has really widened the gaps that existed pre-pandemic. We have seen huge losses in early learning and huge losses in literacy development as well. If we are to look closely at ECD, the World Bank released a report in March 2021, which showed that about 40% of children in low and middle income countries had no access to stimulating environments. Looking at early grade reading losses, we have received a report as well that has been published by the South African Labour and Development Research Unit in May 2021. It also showed that there are huge losses that were suffered by our learners, particularly losses relating to schooling, as well as losses relating to learning. We have seen that if learners are compared to their peers in previous years, they score lower than what their peers scored in previous years. The lesson that we have learned then here is the need to accelerate the expansion of access to resources. This includes digital tools and resources, as we had to rely on remote learning during the pandemic. What we can then also say is a lesson here is that as we see schools returning, particularly the primary schools, multi-sectoral engagement and mobilization are going to be key if we are going to recover from these losses. These realities also do surface when it comes to the general culture of reading in South Africa. And what does data say here? The 2016 National Reading Survey, commissioned by the South African Book Development Council, painted a rather sad picture about the lack of reading in South African homes. 73% of South Africans were found not to be interested in reading books, and that 50% of households did not own a single leisure reading book, and that only less than 10% of the population were committed readers. These realities therefore tell us that the reading challenges evidenced by our learners mirror what is happening in the greater society. Sadly, this will undermine South Africa's prospects of successfully participating in the global economy. What we see then is that this is not just a home or schools or communities or universities challenge. It is a challenge facing our nation, and it needs all of us to resolve it. What these realities make clear then is that we need multi-sectoral and multilateral mobilization, and we need to coordinate this mobilization. We know that we have government and non-government spheres that need to collaborate. We have government itself, which has to show leadership and has to collaborate and promote partnerships with institutions of higher learning, with NGOs and civil society organizations, with business and industries, with communities and households, and it also has to promote collaboration and partnerships with individuals in South Africa. And this will ensure that literacy and development become indeed a national project. And once that happens, we will then be able to align our purpose and will be able to jointly mobilize the resources that are required to make a shift in this. Why is multi-sectoral and multilateral mobilization and coordination important for this national project? Besides aligning our purpose and joining forces in ensuring that we mobilize resources, pulling together will amplify our voices in calling for a literacy and reading movement. It will also maximize our efficiencies, and we will minimize wastage, as sometimes we see a lot of duplication. We will be able to clarify roles. We will be able to promote meaningful and active stakeholder participation. We will be able to coordinate and align ourselves better, and we will be able to promote parent, caregiver, community, and individual agency. When we look at all of the role players in the literacy and reading space, we see that there is a reading ecosystem. And what we saw as a department was that we can go really far when we tap into this ecosystem. And this was revealed when we were developing the integrated reading sector plan, which I will talk about just now. We collaborated with provinces, with academia and organizations in the reading space and developed the Integrated National Reading Sector Plan, which is premised on 10 strands to improve literacy outcomes in the foundation phase and in the intermediate phase. These strands are about strengthening the capacity of the sector. They are about promoting teacher development and support, about provisioning learner support, about mobilizing parents and the community, about providing and utilizing resources. This includes books and other tools and resources, about tracking learner performance in reading outcomes. It's about promoting research, monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. It is also about promoting and nurturing partnerships, as well as advocacy and communication. Informed by the sector plan, all provinces have then developed their reading strategies, which are currently being implemented. So this is just one example of the cross-functional nature that is required for this national project. Now let me talk about our flagship project as the Department of Basic Education, the Read to Lead campaign, which is about really informing the nation that a reading nation is a leading nation. This is a campaign that is championed by the Minister of Basic Education to encourage a national focus on improving the reading abilities of South African children. The campaign is championed by the Minister of Basic Education to encourage a national focus on improving the reading abilities of South African children. It seeks to provide energy as well as inspiration for reading across all levels of the education system, in homes and in the public domain, also to ensure that children are able to demonstrate age-appropriate levels of reading. It is about parental, caregiver, and society involvement, as well as coordination. One of the many platforms aimed at amplifying the call for all South Africans to participate in the improvement of literacy and reading is this campaign. It also has been echoed by His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa when he called for all South Africans to get involved and to become a reading nation. So what is the role of the department in all of this? This includes the role of the provincial departments of education. Through the campaign, the department is calling upon all South Africans across all sectors to join its efforts of promoting reading. The department therefore needs to provide schools and teachers with clear directives on the department's expectations of achieving the expected levels of performance in reading skills. It needs to improve the quality of learning, needs to provide information to parents on how to assist their children in reading. The DB is therefore encouraging communities, parents, caregivers to value reading and to ensure that children are supported in their reading development journeys. It also needs to support the teachers' professional growth to become competent teachers who can teach reading effectively. The department needs to invest in the expansion of access to books. It needs to champion the provision of school libraries, including digital libraries. It needs to develop reading norms, particularly in the African languages. It also is its role to develop and nurture partnerships. And what about the schools? The schools should develop and implement reading policies. The schools, particularly primary schools, should set aside at least 30 minutes a day for drop ball and read. School leaders and school managers must support the reading promotion initiatives of their schools. They should develop partnership networks with parents, with communities, with NGOs, and with business. The school governing bodies should mobilize parents to support the school's reading promotion initiatives. And what about the parents, the families, the youth, and community leaders? It is important for parents to recognize that literacy is a socio-economic issue and also understand its link to unemployment and poverty. Parents have an important role to play in the way they model reading behavior. In particular, this is important for young children who are still forming their own reading habits and attitudes. Parents should ensure that their homes become hubs of storytelling and story sharing. They should assist the teachers by keeping track on the reading progress of their children and also by providing support to assist and complement the role of the school. They should promote library membership where libraries are available. Parents and families are important partners and important role players in this national project. They can also volunteer to take part in the school's literacy promotion initiatives. And in terms of community leaders, they have an important role to play in raising the profile of reading and in influencing the design of literacy promoting community-based interventions. They are therefore very critical in the nation-building agenda, and their voice is important in showing the link between literacy and community prosperity. Children need to access and read books as part of their daily activities. They do need to spend at least 30 minutes a day reading at home. And by doing this, they will be making reading a habit that will enable them to read fluently and with understanding. They should be encouraged to actively participate in debate teams, in speech competitions, in poetry, in storytelling, in spelling bees, as well as be encouraged and supported to join community libraries where these exist. With support from parents and from their guardians, children need to take care of the books they read, and they need to share what they have read with others after reading it. They need to set up reading clubs for fun, and they need to join those that exist, and not necessarily as part of the school program, but these are things that they can do even in their communities. And the NGOs, what are their roles? NGOs contribute by regularly highlighting the importance of reading. And we know that they also make a contribution by sparking and sustaining the culture of reading in South Africa. They need to partner with the department in schools in the design and in the implementation of literacy programs. They also do need to attract corporate investment towards expanding particularly the access to books. And they can also participate in the literacy and reading ambassador programs. And now let's talk about the role of the corporate and the business sector. The corporate and the business sector can also partner with the department, with schools, and with NGOs, particularly to identify the social corporate programs that they should be implementing. We also have, as part of this sector, the network providing companies. These can contribute by zero rating the platforms for educational content, especially those that provide content for reading. We also have TV and radio, and these they can use their broadcast solutions to promote literacy through programs that create an awareness around the importance of reading. The corporate and business sector should also promote reading in their own sector, and they can also participate in literacy and reading ambassador programs. What is it that we can then do together in ECD and in early grade to promote literacy and reading? I do want to share with you that the Department of Basic Education will be responsible for providing ECD, which is currently being provided by the Department of Social Development, and this will happen from the 1st of April 2022. So together, We can make available opportunities, including opportunities for access to play materials and age-appropriate books, which will stimulate early years cognitive development and early years literacy, as well as early years numeracy. When it comes to early grade reading, we can make available learning programs and promote access to age-appropriate materials, particularly in the language of the learners, ensure that teachers are competent to teach reading and to support learners, have in school and in classrooms and at home support that is so required to really ensure that both teachers and children and learners are supported. We then need to ensure that no child is left behind. This talks to learners with disabilities and talks to learners who find themselves in multi-grade and multi-language contexts, as well as learners who find themselves in vulnerable situations. All of these learners must be prioritized. We, however, need to leverage technology, particularly in early years and early grade, by ensuring that we design learning opportunities which promote the attainment of 21st century competencies. We then have to invest in digital learning as it is the future of learning. And I think we've seen this during the pandemic when learners had to find themselves accessing learning opportunities in spaces other than schools. Let me now talk about one of the ways in which we can collaborate. We have a platform for collaboration called the National Reading Coalition. It is a network of initiatives, organizations, and individuals that have shared interest. It encourages organizations, businesses, and civil society to be involved and to collaborate in addressing the reading challenge. The NRC is a coordinated structure where reading initiatives and interested stakeholders come together to share knowledge and successful learning experiences. It functions as an agile, self-sustaining network of reading initiatives. Through collaboration, joint planning, and the sharing of resources, the NRC is but one example of what we can achieve when we come together. The virtual reading clubs. These are destined to make a real difference in the lives of millions of South Africans, in our economy, and in our interaction with the world. In the spirit of Tumamina, the President's Reading Circle was established, and the President is its champion. It is driven as one of the initiatives under the banner of the NRC. The reading clubs, which are held on the last Thursday of every month, aim to encourage reading and promote dialogue around topical and social issues that emerge from the stories. I have shared the information about how to join the virtual reading club. Let's talk about leveraging technology to create access to resources. Every possible pathway of making reading resources available to learners should be explored. There should be collaboration with partners like NGOs to expand access to readers. We should leverage technology to complement print resources that we have. And by availing books through digital platforms and making sure that information on where and how to access these platforms is widely publicized. Also by working closely with data providers to increase the suite of zero-rated sites which provide educational content, especially the reading material. What are some of the strategies then that we have in place to encourage people to embrace reading? We have set up a literacy and reading ambassadors program. We also have a database of local poets, of teachers, of elderly storytellers, of learners, of young writers, and of reading volunteers that has been generated, and this is actually used by schools. We also continue with the consistent messaging to community structures, to members of the society, to support reading by establishing reading clubs and book clubs. We also have media programs that create awareness about the importance of reading. For instance, we have the DBE channel, which is accessible on channel 122 on OpenView. We also work with community radio stations, with the local and the mainstream TV stations. We also use social media, we use newspapers, and we use billboards just to promote the importance of reading using all of these platforms. In conclusion then, it is clear that no single sphere, be it government or non-government, can do it alone. And then for this project to be successful, we need to partner with schools, with homes, with communities, and with the greater society, because this is vital for strengthening the education ecosystem. This, however, requires coordination, it requires collaboration, and it requires cooperation by all of these role players. It's important then for them to work together to ensure that they create opportunities to support the children's literacy development journeys right from an early age. We therefore need to work with these communities to strengthen stakeholder participation in early learning and development, as well as in early grade learning. We all need to consciously drive the national agenda of reading. And lastly, let us all read and encourage those around us to do the same. I thank you.